we talk about this shift that's happening, and I heard this in the industry, in the kind of tech industry, as the best summary of what's going on, which is, we're shifting from a world of software as a service or SaaS 1.0 to a world of service as a software, which is now SaaS 2.0. And like for me, this is the true shift that's happening. Before, in the SaaS world, we were building products that customers and users had to come to, put in a lot of work and effort to get value and benefit out of. In the future, the software is the service. The software does the work, or the majority of the work, for the user. What you're paying for is not access to a tool to do a bunch of work in. What you're paying for are outcomes.
Welcome to Behind the Stays, a podcast that shares the stories behind your favorite boutique hotels, short-term rentals, and hospitality brands, and the hosts, operators, and entrepreneurs who've brought them to life. Every Tuesday and Friday, you'll meet the military veterans, the retired flight attendants, the tech entrepreneurs, the school teachers, the single moms, the hoteliers, and real estate investors, who are all, in their own unique ways, shaping the future of travel and hospitality. Discover how these visionaries from all over the world have built stunning landscape hotels in the mountains, designed bohemian bungalows on the beach, erected eclectic, off-grid, nature-immersed escapes, and so much more. Behind the Stays is brought to you by Journey, a first-of-its-kind loyalty program that brings together an alliance of the world's top independently owned and operated stays and allows travelers to earn points and perks on boutique hotels, vacation rentals, tree houses, ski chalets, glamping experiences, and so much more. And I'm your host, Zach Boozy-Cruz, head of the Journey Alliance. All right, friends, without further ado, enjoy the show. In just a moment, you'll meet Shaun Shirazian, CEO of Lodgify. In this episode, Shaun and I have an unfiltered conversation about what's next in hospitality tech. We talk about what's going to change and also what's not changing and why. Shaun shares how a meaningful moment on a San Diego balcony more than a decade ago sparked his passion for short-term rentals, and how that guest connection still drives his work building tools for small operators around the globe. We unpack Lodgify's long-standing mission to arm the underdogs by empowering independent hosts and managers with the same technology advantages as the big players. Shaun draws a clear line between his upbringing as the son of immigrants, his experience at companies like Intuit and PipeDrive, and the deep connection that great tech should level the playing field for the little guys. But this episode isn't just philosophical, it's tactical as well. Shaun offers a refreshingly honest take on why switching PMSs still feels painful and what needs to change, how Lodgify is navigating its role as both OTA partner and direct booking champion, what's holding back the direct book experience, and it's not just about the UX, according to Shaun, and how the best future software will be invisible, delivering outcomes, not just dashboards. We also talk AI, and Shaun shares why Lodgify is entering what he calls Lodgify 2.0, the next chapter of the business, and how he's thinking about solving the industry's biggest problems with his bold team. All right, friends, without further ado, get ready to meet Shaun. All right, Shaun, we are live. Good sir. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Excellent, Zach. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am excited to be having this conversation because it's taken us a little bit of time to get this one scheduled. But here we are, and I have so many questions for you. So I actually want to just go ahead and dive right in. My first question for you, Shaun, is I'm always curious how people fall into hospitality, and specifically the hospitality tech, travel tech space. What attracted you to this industry? I know that you spent some time working in product management for Procter and Gamble. What was it that was intriguing to you about travel tech?
Yeah, sure. I over probably 13 years ago now, I was a host in San Diego. So
Wow.
several years ago, I was living in San Diego, and it was right around the time that Airbnb had been out for a few years. And obviously just being in tech in general, always, looking to play around with new things that are out there. And I had a spare bedroom in my condo in San Diego. So I was like, I'm going to try out this Airbnb thing. And I remember till to this day, I still remember the first experience I had with a guest. He was in town for a conference, and I remember we were grabbing a beer on my balcony, talking about where he's from and his story, and his experiences in life. And it was a beautiful, as usual, a beautiful day in San Diego. We're kind of looking out at the harbor, enjoying this beer, and I just was thinking, like, man, like this encounter never would have happened if it wasn't for a platform like Airbnb to connect these two strangers, to have this 30 minutes of connection. Yet here now, 13 plus years later, I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Hmm.
And so I did that for a number of months. I would kind of rent out my spare bedroom or rent out my condo when I wasn't there, and I just absolutely loved the experience from the host side of it. I loved what it was doing to travel in general, and so have experienced it from that side of it. But to come on the other side of it, to kind of be on the tech side of it, was really a combination of things that came together. And Dennis and the Lodgify team reached out, and it wasn't a sector that I was necessarily looking to work in. But when I heard about the mission of Lodgify, when I thought back about my experiences as a host and as a guest, I was like, man, this seems like an incredible opportunity. And so here I am now.
That's an amazing story. And, what's super fun about the short-term rental industry, and many of my friends who've built incredible businesses in this space, is that everyone seems to have a similar story, right? Like they're different, but it's hey, I rented a place on Airbnb for the first time as a guest, and where I Airbnb'd my apartment or my home out, and I met somebody, and it was this transformative experience. And what's really funny is, as the industry has professionalized, I think a lot of professional operators, quite frankly, probably many of your customers, you know, aren't necessarily Airbnb's biggest fan. But I think I think the industry owes obviously Airbnb a huge amount of gratitude for popularizing this sort of travel experience, for making that stranger who decided to stay in your home, for making you welcome a stranger into your home and then have a beer with him, for making that like normal and feel okay, right? And not
Yes.
just normal and feel okay, but now here we are all these years later, and you're fondly reflecting on this experience. And so I always like
Yes.
to give Airbnb a thank you, quite frankly. And I think they deserve a little bit more of a thank you than they sometimes get for how they sort of changed consumer behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think they lowered a lot of the barriers, right? A lot of the friction points that both hosts and guests had at the time. And so for sure, I agree with that.
So I'm curious, the jump to Lodgify.
Yeah.
You talked to us a little bit about what you had done previously, and what specific skill sets had you acquired that you think, I don't know, make you the perfect CEO for where Lodgify is today.
Yeah, sure. And so the context for your audience, so I've been in role now as CEO of Lodgify since February, so a few months into the role. Before this, I was Chief Product Officer at PipeDrive, sales CRMs company for a number of years. And before that, I was at Intuit for 12 years, the US financial software company that has products like TurboTax in North America and QuickBooks around the world, uh, primarily in product roles, and before that was at Procter and Gamble. And so a mixture of, I would say, product and commercial roles through my career, mainly in tech. And from an early age, I had a passion for technology and a kind of a gravitational pull towards business. So my father was a small business owner. I saw that side growing up, and then when I thought about the tech side, that was also a big interest of mine. And so I studied a mixture of computer science and business. I didn't know there was a whole field of product management when I came out of university.
Mm.
But what was interesting starting my career at Procter and Gamble was I learned a lot about brand management. I learned around about the importance of building a brand and the importance of marketing. And so I saw that side of it. And then when I came into the tech world, I was able to combine that with a lot of the fundamentals from product management, which are very similar actually between kind of brand management and product management. And so I've always had this slant towards product and the importance of building an incredible product, and how important that is in any kind of tech business you're in. And when the Lodgify opportunity came about, the thing that was most appealing to me when in chatting with Dennis and the team was the mission of the company. And it was this extreme focus for the last 13 years of the company being around on the long tail of the short-term rental market, meaning those property owners and property managers with less than 15 rentals. That is where Dennis and the team started focusing it on 13 years ago. And that's what we've been focusing on for the last 13 years. And this long tail of the market is often the overserved and underappreciated and underlooked part of the market. And there's something about that has always fired passion in my belly in my career. And I wish I would have known this like early in my career. Like I had this clarity, but it's only kind of later in the years where I realized, hey, there's something about when I'm building products and companies and businesses that are serving the underdogs that I get incredibly inspired by. And so with QuickBooks and PipeDrive, they were focused on the small part of the market. We weren't focused on enterprise. We were focused on the small business, customer. And it's the same thing with Lodgify. And this is kind of like a personal connection. Again, something I didn't realize till later in my life. But so I'm first generation American. Both my parents are from Iran. They immigrated to the US before the Iranian Revolution in search of a better life. And growing up as the son of immigrants and kind of seeing the sacrifices that they made, leaving their home country, their home culture in search of a better life, and how they had the odds stacked against them in a number of ways. There's these parallels between their life as an immigrant, my dad's life as a small business owner, and this kind of disadvantage identity and role, and how tech can play a role in leveling those playing fields for those that come at a disadvantage. And so it was a combination of the mission, my experience, and passion in product and tech that came together to say, hey, this is a great fit.
I love that story and those musings, because actually, as you were talking, the first thing that came to mind is, what Toby from Shopify always says, or the Shopify team talks about, like arming the rebels. I don't know if that's still like a slogan that they use, but like years ago they were using this like slogan as sort of like, hey, like we're going to help you take on the big retailers, AKA Amazon, and we're going to build the tooling and the functionality for primarily consumer brands to be able to own their own sort of product experience, own their own sales cycle, own their own customer data. And so in many ways, I think that speaks to the work that you guys are striving to do at Lodgify, that others are doing as well. I'm always curious, and one of the, I think, critiques about property management systems kind of in this space, right, is sort of the fact that once you get into a PMS, it can be hard to, not always, but it can be hard to get out, right? And there's, I think, this tension that exists, really, and this is true well beyond this industry. It's really anytime you're using a SaaS product, right? Whether it's a CRM tool, a property management system, et cetera. It's like, it's your data because, they're your customers, they're your guests, but the tech provider has given a ton of tooling to make this data accessible and interesting and dynamic, right? And so, they get some credit for taking your data and helping you actually do things with it. But I think that there sometimes is this tension that exists between, like, how do I get more from my data, or I want to integrate with partner X or partner Y, and there can be some friction between the property management system and these external partners, and or even like making it easy for an individual to garner the insight that they want to garner from their customer data set. How do you think about that? And I guess what role, what are sort of the arguments or maybe the case for kind of why things are the way that they are, and should they change at all?
Yeah. It's such an important question. When you think about property management software and systems, and my experience working in CRM and working in accounting software, it was very similar in those industries as well, right? each one of these categories, we're known as the source of truth. We're known
Mm,
as the system of record.
yeah.
Your accounting software, we're the system of record. We don't want to mess that. You don't want to move that around too often. With CRM, the same thing, and the same thing with property management system. And ultimately, that is not the place we want to be as far as a customer not leaving us because they're worried about their data or they're worried about the switching costs and these sorts of things, right? Like we are insanely focused on building the best and easiest to use software for the customer segments that we serve first and foremost, so that this is not an issue. But I totally get your point, and ultimately on the data um, question, it's the customer's data, right? So there's no question about that from my standpoint. This is the customer's data. We use it in a way to kind of help surface insights and actionable recommendations so they can get the most out of their rental and things that they can do better. But ultimately, it's their data. And so, yeah, we definitely don't want it to be a situation where a customer feels, with the handcuffs on in any of our softwares in the industry to be in this situation. Definitely not the situation we want.
It wasn't that anything was wrong. No, not really. It was just, I don't know, life. The kids were young, so full of life, but always needing more. Their careers were oh so demanding, and it always felt like saying no was just never an option. And somewhere in between it all, they had misplaced each other. The bickering had become more frequent, the patience thinner, vulnerability a rare guest, romance something that they promised that they'd get back to eventually, but eventually never came until here. At first, it was just a drink at the lobby bar. It's designed so effortlessly intimate, it made conversation feel natural again. Then a slow walk through the garden, up to their handcrafted safari tent, where a cellist played a song that neither of them recognized, but somehow felt like home. And then, without thinking, their hands found each other. Without effort, without expectation. And suddenly, they were laughing, like they had on the second date at the coffee shop downtown that no longer existed. They were complaining about each other's mothers like they had on the cobblestone street in Rome under St. Peter's shadow. It wasn't an escape from reality. It was, in fact, their truest reality. It was them. At Journey, we're building a collection of stays that inspire reconnection. Do you know a hotel, a treehouse, a ski chalet, or other soulful property that has inspired you to reconnect? If so, share it with me at zach@journey.com.
It's interesting kind of seeing businesses like you guys and others who you think about like legacy systems, right? I was just actually at the VRMA's executive summit in Miami a couple weeks ago, and you walk around the exhibit hall, and there are vacation rental management or software companies that have been in the industry for literally decades, right? And it's funny when you talk to customers and or you just pick people's brains around that room, and people will say things like, there's certain software that's like built so that it's just too difficult to like leave. And from a business perspective, it's like, that's awesome. Like that's amazing. But I think just generally in tech, and again, you would probably be able to speak to this much better than me. But when I think about tools like QuickBooks, of which I was a user when I owned a small business, right? And a happy one at that. And you think about sort of like how tech has really risen to try to be incredibly user friendly, right? Quite frankly, like it's very easy to, you don't like one travel app, go ahead and download another. Like you don't like one CRM company, go find another cloud-based CRM company. Now, like I think we're at a moment in time where switching has quite frankly like never been easier. Now, I think folks who have built businesses on these like legacy systems, it is really really hard to get out of these systems. I'm curious from your observation, even just kind of philosophically, like, has there been a change in how technologists, like yourself, product folks like yourself, think about how to build software, how to build tech, so that it's kind of easier to onboard, but then also like easier to let go of?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of philosophies that have influenced my approach to building for customers. And I would say the number one philosophy on that is being insanely focused on what's not changing for customers, right? And this is a quote from Jeff Bezos years ago, right? Where he's like, there's a lot of focus. You can spend a lot of time thinking about what's going to change for your customers in the coming years. But actually, what you need to be thinking about is what's not going to change. Like, what hasn't changed in the last 10 years and what's not going to change in the next 10 years. And so if we think about that question, reflect on that question for hosts and property managers in the short-term rental industry, actually, there's a lot of things that haven't changed in the last 10 and aren't going to change in the next 10. And if you think about, they're going to want more bookings, they're going to want more revenue, they want to spend less time getting it, and they want to minimize the cost of that, whether it's through commission or other costs that they're spending across the board, or switching costs. And so these are the customer outcomes that they care the most about. They're going to continue to care the most about in the next 10 years. And so when we think about building a company, a durable company and a durable product, it's on these things that are like eternal and are durable. And the story that I like to tell the team on this is, like, I spend a lot of my time with customers, prospects in thinking about software, those that are Lodgify customers, those that have been Lodgify customers in the past. And I always ask the same two questions. Number one is, what do you love about hosting? And number two is, what do you like least about it? And there was a story that one of the early customers I met with shared with me. And he was a customer of ours in Spain. He was a CEO of his own startup, and he had a rental near the beach. And it was a very kind of like, it was an e-commerce startup, very high pressure, high stress. It was his company. And he was telling a story about how he would usually have check-in around lunchtime. So he could leave his work, drive over to the condo to check in the guests. And he said every guest's reaction at check-in was the same. He'd open the door, they'd walk in, and the first thing they see is this view of the ocean right in front of them. And they all would react with, wow. And he himself, seeing that reaction from his guests, melted all of the stress that he had from his day job and recharged his batteries so that when he was driving back to work, he was all good to go for the afternoon. He had had his fix of what he needed. And he's like, this is why I do what I do. This is what I love. And it's that art of hosting, is that connection with somebody, to kind of invite them into your home. You know, yes, there's the business aspects of it as well, but for him, it was that thing that he loved about it.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about it, there's a lot of things that get in the way of that. So when I asked him the flip of that question, what do you not like? What do you like least about hosting? It's the admin. It's the manual effort that it still takes to connect systems, and where's the data, and what's the source of truth, and it's the cost that I may be spending on commissions relative to the OTAs and other things. And so ultimately, our job is to obsess about taking all those things that are diluting the love elements and really emphasizing those things that they love about it, so that they can experience more and more of that. Yeah. And so to kind of like come back to your question, like the philosophy is simple, is to obsess about what's not changing, what our customers are not going to, what our customers are going to continue to care about in the next several years.
That was so well said, and I absolutely love that story. This is a beautiful transition to my next question, which is this delicate balance, I would imagine, that you and the Lodgify team and other PMSs have to play between, being partners with the OTAs and strategic partners at that, while also, right, trying to help your core customer build tooling to not maybe be OTA independent, but to be less dependent on the OTAs. I mean, the positioning, the marketing that many property management systems over the years have implemented is basically like, hey, own your own guest data, build sort of like your own business. If you just list on the OTAs, like you don't really you don't really have a business, right? I mean, people have taken this to the extreme, by far. But there is sort of this delicate balance in that these systems need to be integrated in partnership with the OTAs, while also providing tooling for guests to build out their own direct booking ecosystems, to build out their own brands. How do you wrestle with that tension? And looking out over the next few years, do you have any predictions or insights into how you think that tension will continue to evolve?
Yeah. The origin story of Lodgify and what Dennis and Marco, our co-founders, started with was very much focused on this point around helping hosts become independent. And so actually what Lodgify started out as was a direct booking website that you could create. That was the only thing it did, was help hosts and property managers create a direct booking website. We didn't have channel management. We didn't have all these property management software capabilities. That was it. And that was the thing, that was the killer feature for Lodgify for a number of years. And I remember talking to Dennis and the team, it actually was a big controversial point and discussion on, should Lodgify become a property management system? Or should it continue to be this point solution play and just, focus on that? And they made the decision several years ago to build out channel management capabilities so that customers can connect to multiple channels and really become this all-in-one property management solution. And so if you kind of know that history about us, know that legacy that Lodgify has, it definitely is ingrained in the DNA of the company, and it's a part of our mission statement to help hosts and property managers become independent. But to your point, there's a symbiotic relationship that is there between the OTAs and direct bookings. And, my perspective on this is that they're very complementary, and actually there can be a very nice virtuous cycle between them. And one of the things that we see from the data and from customer conversations is that the two combined are very powerful. Because what happens oftentimes, which is very hard to replicate on a direct booking experience, is trust. One of the things that the marketplaces and the OTAs have built and done an incredible job with is trust, both for hosts and for guests. They've overcome that barrier. They kind of have kind of validated both sides of the ecosystem on that front. And so that is great for a first-time booking. So if you're a guest, that kind of alleviates that issue or concern that you may have. Yeah. And so you're going to book with that host. But then for the next booking that you may want to do, and let's say you want to visit that city again, whether it's San Diego, wherever that may be, then you've built, as a host, you've built a relationship with that guest. To get them to book again, then you have a connection. You can use your direct booking website. You can use other assets that you may have to get them to try to book again, but directly. And so again, this like 1-2 punch of like, how do we leverage the strengths that come with the marketplaces and the OTAs for the use cases that make the most sense? And then for the use cases and the strengths that we have on the direct booking side, we have those. And so how can they work together, benefiting one another?
Why do you think the UI that we see generally with direct booking websites just seems to be still like so far off from Airbnb's UI? Now, granted, we're talking about, $100 billion, their market cap is, I think, is significantly lower now. At one point, right, $100 billion company versus, these oftentimes bootstrapped companies, less bootstrapped now. So I understand from a resource perspective, you're talking about night and day in terms of the amount of time and attention that can be put into UI. But my whole thing with folks in the industry for several years now has been like, I now like always go look for a direct booking site, but still half the time I wind up booking through Airbnb if it, to your point, is my first time. Because like the checkout experience and like even like the booking widgets, it's just so freaking cumbersome, right? And so it's like, and I'm someone in the industry, right? Like I know what the right thing to do is, right? And candidly, like I still often choose the OTA unless I have like a personal relationship with the operator. I don't want to do that, but in large part, it's because the tech feels so antiquated. It feels cumbersome. It feels very, very clunky. And I'm just shocked, quite frankly, that there's still not a better booking widget. There's still not a more on brand direct booking website. That there really isn't the Shopify for short term rental business building that many people claim to be. What help me understand this, Shaun? Like is this just really, really difficult? Is it that people aren't prioritizing resources in the right way? Is it because there's narrative out there that consumers don't actually care about these things? Like, how do you guys think about this challenge?
Yeah, I think it's one where there's massive opportunity in front of us. It's one where the tech is getting to a place where this gap between kind of what you ideally would like to build and the effort required to build that is closing, right? And
Yeah,
you look at what you can do on Lovable, and some of the incredible sites that are out there now on like no code, low code
yeah,
experiences that you can build. This gap is shrinking, right? You kind of think back to those that remember Dreamweaver, to even the early days of the website builders that have been out there. Like, there was still a big gap between, even if you had a sharp design mind and eye, like being able to effort to get that into pixels and get that effectively brought to life was difficult.
yeah,
And so, but that is shrinking. That gap is closing. And so I think with the technology that is quickly evolving around us, this is where it's a massive, really exciting opportunity that we're spending a lot of energy and thinking about, given our heritage in this space and kind of how the tech can help us evolve in this area and help it make it even easier. That being said, there is a science to design. There is a science
yeah,
to user experience. And now customers and users don't need to know that. That can be kind of hidden in the user experience and through the intelligence of the product. But, to your very point, like, there's a user experience pyramid
mm,
where, something needs to be functional, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be like consistent. And then there's delight at the very top, right? And usually when you kind of look at websites that are out there today, there's like a combination of those layers are off.
yeah,
Like, hey, this like button is not working, that's strange. Or hey, like this page is like a different consistency and pattern than this other page. And when those things don't ladder up, that deteriorates trust. That
yeah,
deteriorates, like, am I going to pull out my credit card and put it into the site even though have these questions?
yeah,
And so again, you don't need to kind of know this science. You don't have to know the art of user experience. This can be embedded in the product. But I think this is why it's been the case and why there's been this gap, but this gap is now closing.
yeah, I sure hope so. I don't know. Are you familiar with the product Selfbook at all? Have you looked at
No,
Selfbook?
I'm not.
They're in the hotel space. I actually had their founder on a few weeks ago, and I think they're kind of like revolutionizing the booking engine for the booking widget, at least for hotels, specifically like independent hotels. But that is like the closest like delightful user experience, the closest delightful user experience that I've ever had
Hmm.
while booking a stay. And I've been like hungry for somebody to do this for short term rental operators, because I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that listen to this podcast. They've built some incredible brands in the space. They're the folks that have invested lots of time and energy into building really cool, unique stays. They've got viral Instagram accounts. They've invested and really over-indexed by many accounts in sort of the positioning and their brand. And all of them are super frustrated because at face value, right, you go to their website and it's stunning and the UX is amazing. Their Instagram is like perfectly branded. And then the minute you go to like book, like they're all using the PMS is available in the market today, and like you lose like I don't know 80% of that experience. And now I think most users are like, all right, whatever, it's a checkout page, fine, I'll deal, right? I do think we will deal. Many consumers will deal, but from the operator's perspective, it's like, is this that hard? Like, is there how do we maintain more of our branded experience while also leveraging this powerful technology that we all need. And most of these people are not product people. Most of these people aren't technologists themselves. And I just feel like there's this frustration that many people have. And so, I talk about this with my friends all the time. I'm like, once somebody figures out how to make like an aesthetically beautiful and, brand integrated booking experience, like that's the platform that everyone's going to go to, because more, people are caring more about brand. People are building more branded collections of STRs, not less. And people are looking for ways to, differentiate their guest experience. And I think, the booking experience is that is the threshold that you have to cross, right? Everything else, right, technically is crucial, but the big threshold you have to cross is, will people trust me enough to, as we have said many times now, give me their credit card? Let me, pay with Apple Pay, right? Let me pay with Google Pay, like those sorts of experiences. It's like, it's just frustrating that, that's not it's frustrating that it's not mainstream yet. I'm sure that we're getting there. I'm sure that you and the team are actively working on a bunch of this stuff, but I'm eager for the day when I can book a stay at one of my favorite, properties, and it feels like I'm checking out with Stripe or like, Shop Pay or something like that. That'll be the day where I'll break out the champagne and toast to the industry. So get us there faster, Shaun.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's such a great point. I completely agree. And look, this is why we're so excited and bullish about this as well. And like I said, spending a lot of energy. And so some exciting things in the pipeline that we're working on in this area. But it goes back to your point on trust. Like ultimately, design, user experience, all these elements, the checkout, all ladder up to trust.
Yeah.
And there's a number of ways that we can help our customers with overcoming the trust barrier. Design and user experience is a big part of it, and other things as well. But yeah, once this is solved, this can dramatically help when it comes to direct bookings.
I actually want to go back to an earlier question and just get any candid thoughts that you have or can share on sort of this tension between building tooling to, arm the rebels, to arm the independent operators, while also, right, being good channel managers and establishing good relationships with the OTAs, which you need to do. Does it ever feel like there's like a, push and pull there a little bit? Like, are you guys worried about like, oh, hey, maybe we shouldn't build this feature because it'll, I don't know, piss off Airbnb? Like, are those things that you guys think about? Do you talk about those things? Do you think that that's like a tension that exists in the market right now?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't been something that has come up. To be honest with you, yeah, it's at the end of the day. Look, for the OTAs, as you mentioned, we're a big strategic partner, as are a number of the large PMS players in the space. So they love what we do for them, and vice versa. And so the more that we can get customers happy, and kind of all boats rise with this tide, the better. And so, I have not been in any conversation where it's been a tough decision on trade-offs of hey, this is going to completely put us at odds versus the objectives on the OTA side or anything like that. If anything, when we kind of think about where we're focused, it is benefiting the customer first and foremost.
Yeah.
And with that, the OTAs will benefit and the customers will benefit from a direct booking standpoint as well. So everything we approach is customer back, because all stakeholders in this business benefit when that is the case.
Yeah. Very well said. I've been thinking a lot too, just about this growing consumer awareness around direct bookings. And I think, quite frankly, with the rise of a lot of, Instagram famous short-term rentals, and or just as folks have spent more time and energy really identifying with their properties, building brands around their properties. And of course, this isn't everybody, but I do think there's a growing number of people that really care about building branded collections. Otherwise, it is sort of a race to the bottom. Not everyone wants 500 units and is just going to, not everyone's strategically positioned to just optimize for scale, right? Lots of folks want to optimize for quality and for hospitality differentiation as the core, or a great hospitality experience as the core differentiator. And so for folks who are sort of in that latter camp, I wonder, as consumers do just become more aware of other ways to book, the fact that they don't need to use Expedia, they don't need for hotels, they don't need to use Airbnb to book a short-term rental. Are you guys seeing sort of like shifts in data in terms of just like overall percentages of bookings coming direct? Are there any sort of trends that you guys regularly think about or talk about internally that give some color to what I'm describing here?
Yeah, definitely it's data that we're looking at all the time. I think in the aggregate, it's really hard to kind of say in aggregate. So we kind of look at this
Yeah,
like market by market, look at it depending on the mixture of like properties we have as far as more urban versus non-urban, because you get these kind of different shifts that you can see based off of these variables. But what we have seen is there's no question that um, direct bookings have become more and more a piece of the pie over the years. So there's no question about that, which is great for hosts and property managers in the space. And especially to your point, it's become so competitive on the marketplaces,
yeah,
especially in these high density locations. This is a great way to try and stand out. But it's still like if you kind of look at that share relative to the share of OTAs, it's still small, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so there's like we're still at the beginning stages of what this could be. And like it's only been like the early adopters as far as guests that have been willing to kind of go out on a limb and trust this website that may not be optimal and put their credit card out there. And so there's still like in the early stages of what this can be for the future,
yeah.
which is what makes it super exciting.
I've wondered on that point too about like trust, especially with credit cards, as a lot of credit cards have gotten more sophisticated in like their consumer protection, their ability to sort of like detect fraud, their ability to just kind of like refund you, no questions asked or few questions asked. I've wondered how like that dynamic plays into trust with respect to bookings. I should look into this. I haven't looked at like data on my Capital One card now, for example. Like I'm able to just like cancel reoccurring subscriptions via my like Capital One app. Like if I forget to
Mhm.
like cancel HBO or like whatever after my free trial, I literally can now just cancel it via the Capital One app, which is like an amazing consumer experience. I'm sure it's horrible for the HBOs of the world, but I wonder too how that dynamic will shift as people put more and more trust in the card itself, maybe even more than like the brand. So I'm willing to take the risk because if worse comes to worse, like Amex will refund me or something like that.
Mhm.
Obviously that's not for every consumer, but it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you think when it comes to we're living in, I would argue, one of the most exciting technological times in recent history? Some people have said since the advent of the internet. Others have said, well, certainly since the advent of mobile. We're here right now at the advent of AI, and it's impossible to miss. I for the very first time used ChatGPT to like book a hotel, and for an
Amazing.
upcoming trip, I told it like, hey, these are my, I'm an Amex card holder. These are my points. This is what I'm looking for in a stay. Amex has fine hotels and resorts, and give me sort of the best hotel for my family for this particular date with then these are the points I have available or whatever. And it surfaced two options, and I booked one of them, and it was like the exact hotel. Like it was, well, I haven't actually stayed yet, so I'll come back to you to see if it was actually that good. But point being, as a consumer, it was like so validating and so amazing, but then also terrifying. Like, whoa, like what does this mean for the work that I do? What does this mean for the work that my friends in the industry do? How are you guys thinking about this moment, and how is it fueling product decisions? How is it fueling growth decisions? Give us sort of an inside
Yeah.
look into your guys' conversations.
Yeah. Um, it's such an exciting time to be in tech, right? And this is what I tell the team is like you think about what's happening around us as far as this technological revolution. that, hasn't been seen in several lifetimes. Like, and to be in the industry, in an industry that is benefiting from this tech is incredible. It is just, we have to be incredibly grateful of that. And, we talk about this shift that's happening. And I heard this in the industry, in the kind of tech industry, as the best summary of what's going on, which is, we're shifting from a world of software as a service, or SaaS 1.0, to a world of service as a software, which is now SaaS 2.0. And like, for me, this is the true shift that's happening. Before, in the SaaS world, we were building products that customers and users had to come to, put in a lot of work and effort to get value and benefit out of. In the future, the software is the service. The software does the work, or the majority of the work, for the user. What you're paying for is not access to a tool to do a bunch of work in. What you're paying for are outcomes. Just as if you were to go use a service provider, if I were to use a property manager, a human property manager, I'm paying them to do the work. I'm paying them to manage my rental. And so that is where things are headed. That is where, the entire technology is shifting towards. And so how we think about customer experiences that we can build in this world, how we think about business model, how we think about branding and our go-to-market efforts, everything has an opportunity for reimagination and reinvention. Yeah. And we just came out of a company-wide event a few weeks ago that we shared our vision for this next chapter of Lodgify, which we call Lodgify 2.0. And this actually coincides with our 13th birthday as a company. So I was telling the team, just like when you turn 13 years old, you're entering adolescence. There's a period of insane growth and transformation that you go through, and we're about to go through that as an industry, right? And for us, this is a big chapter of reinvention and reimagination as we think about the entire company and the entire customer experience that we can build with these tools at our fingertips. Now, that is all changing. But what's not changing is what I shared earlier. Those customer outcomes and that hosts and property managers cared about 10 years ago, those things are going to still remain the same, and they're going to care about those 10 years from now. The tools that we have at our disposal to deliver against those outcomes is what makes this a really magical time to be building experiences and companies in this era. Yeah. And so all those aspects we're thinking about as far as how we can move from software as a service to really being service as a software.
I love that framing. Honestly, that was the best framing I've heard about this moment. So that was fantastic. I'm certainly copying that, and I'm sure to give you credit. But that was wonderful. One of the things I think a lot about too is like we're living in a moment in time where new features and like the rollout of updates. Like if you just look at, ChatGPT as one example, right? The frequency of model updates, the frequency of feature updates is so freaking fast, right? Relative to like, I was a super early HubSpot user, and I remember I worked at an agency for a long time. We were one of HubSpot's like first partner agencies, and for our audience who might not be aware, HubSpot's one of the leading CRM companies today. And I remember distinctly, like every like year they had this big event. It was called Inbound. Actually, they still have it. But like Inbound was like the big like reveal of like, this is all the new product that we built and all the new features that, you'll have now available. Obviously all the other CRM companies, Dreamforce, Salesforce has that. People do this, and they've done this for years. But we would wait like annually for like this big release, right? And there would be smaller releases along the way, of course. I think we're living in this moment where new feature releases are going to happen incredibly fast. They should happen incredibly fast, especially for companies that are AI native that are building today. And the question is, I think to your earlier point, Shaun, is I really do think because your customers are going to want to know what's sticking around. Like what is going to stay the same, And you'll probably have to lead with that more than like promising like this future feature or this future reality. It's like, no, we're going to go do all of that. And like, we can talk about that, but don't worry, this isn't going to change in that. And like, that will probably be the more important sell in the future, because the rate at which feature updates will be able to be released is just, infinitely faster, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I think there's also maybe an element of, again, this like SaaS 1.0 that's a relic of that may be different, right? Because if you think about, again, if we use the analogy of, and we stick to our space of today, if you're using a property manager,
Yeah.
you don't really care the tools that the property manager is using to do this service on your behalf. It's invisible because you're paying them for this outcome.
Yeah.
And so if we kind of think about this new world that we're going into, feature updates made sense when you're the user of those features.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you care about that. You care about that. But ultimately, still, the thing that you care about are outcomes.
Yeah.
And so you care less about a feature. Now, that doesn't mean there's obviously still going to be things that you as a user are going to do and want to be involved in and want to be hands-on with. But ultimately, the goal is that a lot of that gets off your plate so that you can enjoy the benefits of hosting, whatever that may be, whether that is you're traveling with your spouse, you're not tied down in that location, or you're going to do the check-in and having that wow moment. And so I think I completely agree with you that the velocity of innovation and the velocity of iteration is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And will continue to accelerate. At the end of the day, I care less about that is a means to an end, which is delivering better outcomes for the customer.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be obsessed about.
Oh, I love it. Well, I've saved this for the very end of our conversation, Shaun, because for obvious reasons, this is you guys are not sponsoring this. This is like I got, when I told several folks I was having you on my show, I had several of whom happened to be your customers. Like, I've never heard more positive things about a property management system than I've heard about Lodgify. I've heard a lot about PMSs, a lot, and a lot of we use X, or we're on Y, But there's something about like Lodgify customers, and again, listeners, this is not a paid endorsement, that like they're like excited to talk about the product. So keep doing the great work. Excited for this next chapter for Lodgify 2.0 for you and the team. Eager to see how you guys continue to solve some of the industry's biggest challenges. Eager to see how AI becomes the foundation for this next chapter of the company that y'all are building. Thank you so much for your time. Keep up the great work. Know that you guys have a great reputation, at least for the folks that decide to DM me and tell me what they think about their PMSs.
Amazing. That's great to hear, Zach. Thank you so much for sharing that. We are incredibly lucky to have a great customer base. The team has done an amazing job the last 13 years building Lodgify into what it is today, and really excited about this next chapter of Lodgify going forward.
Wonderful. And for listeners, I'll have links to Shaun's LinkedIn in the show notes below, and also links to the Lodgify website in case you are, for whatever reason, not familiar with it. Just scrolling down to the show notes and go ahead and connect with Shaun and or learn more about Lodgify. Shaun, thanks so much for your time, man.
Thanks, Zach.
Hey friends, thanks for joining us for this episode of Behind the Stays. I'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at Behind the Stays, or send me an email at zach@journey.com. If this is your first time tuning in, it's a pleasure to have you, and we hope to have you back again soon. But if you've been a listener for a while, I'd greatly appreciate if you'd subscribe to the show if you aren't already, and then leave us a rating and review of the show wherever you're streaming this podcast. Oh, and if you know a hotelier or a hospitality entrepreneur that's building something new and novel, I invite you to introduce them to me so that my team and I can discuss bringing them on the show. Again, you can just shoot me an email at zach@journey.com or a DM on Instagram. Behind the Scenes is brought to you by Journey, a next-generation loyalty program built for the modern traveler. We're looking to onboard new boutique hotels, unique stays, and the top vacation rental management companies onto our platform every day. If you're a hospitality entrepreneur who has a stay or a collection of stays with soul, we'd love for you to apply to join our alliance at journey.com/alliance. Again, that's journey.com/alliance. Thanks for being here, y'all. We will see you next time.